Good morning. How are we all doing? Has everyone been successful at keeping their New Year's resolutions? Yeah, me neither. My name is Anthony Roberson. I'm the worship leader here and an elder on staff, for those of you who may not know me. It is my pleasure to spend this time with you. I'm obviously not the one who's normally doing this. It's Ryan, who's our normal pastor on Sundays. But every now and then I get the opportunity to spend a few moments giving you guys a message that I feel God has laid on my heart. And I guess with that, I pray that the message that I feel like I need to say today is somehow resonates with you, that it helps you to grow deeper in Christ and your relationship with each other. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. And if you have your Bibles, and you want to go ahead, turn to 1 Corinthians 13, and that's where we'll begin. This year, my wife and I, we will celebrate our 15th anniversary. We've been together for 18 years overall, but, I know that probably doesn't seem that long to most of you, or to some of you, but that is almost triple the average of the average marriage, whatever, triple the amount of time that the average marriage in America is. I can't say that. I think it's like 5 or 6 years. I still remember how we met, and our first date is one that I'm not exactly proud of. Both of us grew up only 45 minutes apart in Indiana, having never met each other. Found ourselves in Knoxville, Tennessee, at a college called Johnson Bible College at the time. A few weeks in, our friend circles began to hang out with each other. So I was acquainted with who she was, but there was no mutual interest. So one day, myself and a few buddies of mine, we were sitting in one of the dorms playing video games as usual. This particular room, it belonged to a friend. I think his name was Ryan, but I can't remember. What's interesting about Ryan was that he had sworn off being in a relationship in order to focus on his studies. He wanted to become a minister, and he wasn't interested in dating anyone, as that would be a distraction. So I came up with this hilarious idea to set him up on a date behind his back, forcing him into this distraction he was trying so hard to avoid. Now, I wasn't very bright back then, but I was good with computers. And back then, we didn't really have texting like we do today. Instead, we would message each other on our computers. And so, because of that, it was easy to pretend to be someone else. So I began messaging this cute little girl named Amanda, as if I were Ryan, setting up this elaborate date. I had it all planned out. And so the date was on, and Amanda was expecting to meet Ryan later that evening. So, finding it hysterical, I showed Ryan this conversation I'd been having on his behalf, and I instructed him on when and where to begin this new journey. Well, he wasn't having it. He was furious and did not find it as funny as I did. He had decided that he was going to let this girl get stood up and then let me take the blame. I could just imagine her getting all excited and dressed up, perfecting her makeup, fixing her hair, only to stand there waiting for this guy who would never show up. I felt like a jerk. And so I thought, well, the date is already planned out, and I'm not busy. I told you I wasn't very bright. So the time approaches, and she's still thinking this is on, and I didn't want to be a complete jerk. So it was me who showed up when she was expecting Ryan. As I approached her that evening, I saw her look of excitement and anticipation turned into a look of disappointment and devastation. I don't know how it happened, but I explained myself, and she somehow understood how bad I felt and accepted my apology. She was already dressed up and ready, so decided to take a chance on me, and we spent the entire day together. It was one of the happiest days of my life. I knew that day that this was the girl that I was going to marry, and I even broke the one rule you're not supposed to break on your first date. I told her I loved her. And it worked out because she said it back. I think she felt sorry for me more than anything. But here we are 18 years later. This morning, I want to talk to you about love. I want to dive into how we may have a twisted view of love, what love is and what the scriptures say about this gift from God that's called love, what it means to love the way God intended for each other, and what it means to be in a gospel-centered community who genuinely loves each other. Now, I love Amanda. There's no human being that I love more than her. And after 15 years of marriage, our love continues to grow. She is my best friend. But it wasn't always this way. If I can be completely honest with you, 15 years ago, after all the sparks would fly, and Amanda and I, we knew we wanted to get married, and so we did. After a few short months together, and for the next several years, would be the most difficult time in our lives as we fought to hold together a marriage that seemed destined to fail. Those first few years were a nightmare, and she will tell you the same. It just didn't work, and we couldn't figure out what it was. We were just fighting all the time. Our home was not a place of comfort. It was not a safe place for her, and it was not a safe place for me. Often, I would lie awake at night thinking, this can't be the rest of my life. This can't be what God intended for me. You see, I didn't realize that I had been trained by our culture as to what love is. I had been trained by everything around me, from TV shows to movies and music, that the idea of love is a shallow, empty, and unstable type of self-seeking, self-consumed, conditional love. An emotion that can be turned on and off like a light switch. The idea that love is something that can be fallen into and out of, depending on how happy the other person is making us. See, we measure our love for one another by what they're able to do for us. So really, we don't love the other person, we love ourselves. That's not love where you make me happy, so I love you. That's not you loving someone else, that's you loving you. And my expectation for Amanda was that she was going to do whatever I needed her to do to make me happy. And her expectation of me was that I was going to do anything I could do to make her happy. And we were both trying to fix each other, I guess. And you see, how could you want to come home to that? How could anybody feel safe in that? If love is you making me happy, then won't you have to be careful not to disappoint me or show me your weaknesses? Won't you have to hide your weaknesses so that I'm not disappointed? And eventually, when your weaknesses are seen, you'll be forced to justify them. And the most common means of justification in that moment is to remind the other person of their weaknesses. So now you have someone who's judging you for your weaknesses, and in defense, you will point out their weaknesses. This is a recipe for disaster, and it's how we've defined love in our culture. Just listen to people talk. I fell out of love. I just don't love them anymore. That type of love is weak. It's unstable. In fact, it's a type of love that, the type of love that's probably frowned upon most by our culture is a self-sacrificing love of the will. A love that doesn't change based on our circumstances. We even recite this, even though we don't practice it, in our wedding vows, for better or for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. That's the type of love that the Hebrews would call ahava. What that means is a longing for or a breathing for another. Hebraically, ahava is a verb and a noun. It is an act of doing. It's not just a feeling. It's the idea of whatever it takes, I'm not going anywhere. And this isn't the Nicholas Sparks movie where you're standing in the rain, holding the face, saying, I'll never leave. No, ahava is the kitchen is on fire. The kids are having meltdowns. Bills are past due, and dinner plates, or board games in my case, are being flung past your head in total chaos, saying, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Ahava says, I've seen the ugly side of you, and I'm staying. We're going to make it through this. Yet, our culture would call that unhealthy. The modern thought of love is shallow. It can shift and change at any given moment. It's not sustaining. It's not safe. If you want to understand why the average marriage only lasts 5 to 7 years, you only need to look at how we're defining love. And why would anybody want that? And never mind our culture. Webster's Dictionary, the place we go to learn what words mean, defines love as a strong feeling of affection. It's a feeling. It's an emotion. If it's just a feeling, if it's just an emotion, then what's to stop me from accidentally falling in love with some woman at Bass Pro Shop buying a fishing pole? I like fishing. Fishing makes me happy. Lady in the fishing aisle likes to fish too. Whoops, now I'm in love with Fish Lady and not Amanda. What could I do? It just happened. Cupid in his camo pants hit me from the second floor with one of those new carbon fiber arrows that went on sale last week. This is the kind of garbage we're soaking up in our culture. We love to listen to music, watch movies, and TV shows full of this nonsense. Now, partially to blame for this misunderstanding of the word love are the limitations of the English language. While the Hebrews have many words for the different types of love, the different kinds of ways of loving, we've only got one word, love. And we don't even know what the word love means. You know how I know? Because you love Chick-fil-A. You love that song. You love long walks on the beach, and you love your family. We don't even know what we're saying when we say that anymore. Most of the time when we say, I love you, what we really mean is, you make me happy. You make me glad, and so I love you. You see, in the first few years of our marriage, I didn't love Amanda. I thought I did. But instead, I loved me. That's who I loved. And Amanda wasn't making me as happy and as important as I thought I was. And so there was conflict. But by the grace of God, through prayer, through our family, through our church, He worked on our marriage and showed us both His love. And He taught us how to love each other instead of loving ourselves. And here's why I'm saying this to you this morning. If we don't understand what love is, if we don't understand that love has depth, that it's unconditional and it's unearned, that it's more than an emotion but a call to action, then when we talk about God's love for us or how we've been commanded to love one another, we won't be able to comprehend what that means. we won't understand what that looks like. It won't feel as amazing as it is. Because we'll feel as though we have to measure up. And we'll feel like we have to do everything right in order to please God so that He loves us. And so we build rules, don't we? Don't do this, do that. Say this, don't say that. Arrange it this way, don't miss Sunday. And we create boundaries and we create rules, and we tell ourselves that as long as we follow these rules, we stay within the lines, and then God will love us. He'll be pleased with us. If we check off these items on the list of what makes us good people, God loves us, right? And if we break them because we're not perfect, because we're all sinners, well, then we tell ourselves, well, since I've messed up, He can't be happy with me. We'll begin to look down on one another. We'll look down on our other brothers and sisters, and we'll point out their weaknesses, because that draws attention away from ours. And that's not love. That's something else. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and we'll read verses 1 through 3 of 1 Corinthians 13. It's also on the screen. It says, "If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardships, that I may boast, but I do not have love, I gain nothing." In essence, Paul is saying here that we can do all that God has gifted us to do. I can attain the highest level of Christian maturity. I can perform the most selfless acts. I can sacrifice all for the good of God and for others. I can follow all the rules. I can check off all the boxes. But without love, it's nothing. It means nothing. How is it possible that I might be who God created me to be and use the gifts He's given me for His glory, and it be nothing more than what it says here is a detestable sound? That is the point of this entire chapter. It's a detestable sound, and it's meaningless noise when what drives us is not love. So what is love then? What does it look like? As we continue in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 7, or 4 through 7, a lot of us have these verses plastered on our walls of our homes. They might be displayed in a nice picture frame or on a coffee mug. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres." So if you take from verse 4 the description, love is patient, and from 5, love is not easily angered, you can see that these two descriptions are the different sides of the same coin. Not easily angered is the flip side of is patient. And by nature, none of us like to be interrupted when things are going well. We tend to get irritated when when things are going our way. And I know I do, because there's always that one guy driving down the interstate who weaves in and out of traffic only to cut me off and then slam on his brakes. I'll think to myself, somebody's going to get killed. I better teach them a lesson. So I speed up, I weave in and out of traffic, I cut over, and I slam on my brakes, right? I showed him. We like it when life flows according to plan. And when it doesn't, our natural response is to complain and grumble and be angry and critical and to seek revenge. Now, Paul says love is not easily angered. So what do we do with this whole side of us that has a short fuse and easily complains and easily grumbles and easily gets angry and criticizes? The answer is, it must die. To love like this is to die to ourselves. That guy on the interstate is one of God's children driving that car. I don't know his story. He might be running late to his child's play or rushing his pregnant wife to the hospital. I don't know his story. Who am I to get angry? What makes me so special? I'm commanded to love them no matter what, not teach them a lesson. If I am to be like this, something inside of me must die. My strong cravings for a trouble-free life must die. My need for an uninterrupted schedule must die. My demand for frustrations to get out of my way must die. We simply cannot love the way Paul describes until we die to ourselves. And don't get me wrong, we're going to get frustrated. I'm going to have those feelings of anger. It's my responsibility to deal with that and give it to God. So if you look in the middle of verse 4, it says, love does not boast, it is not proud. And we all like to be appreciated. We like to be admired. We like it when people notice our successes and miss our failures. We like it when we hear people say nice things about us. We don't like it when people make fun of us or criticize us or laugh at us or humiliate us. And so we've developed ways for minimizing our weaknesses and highlighting our successes. We tend to present ourselves in a way that others see all of our strengths while we hide our weaknesses behind false identities. Has anybody ever heard of Facebook? Social media is consumed by this. There are the obvious ways of doing this, like bragging or boasting or an in-your-face type of arrogance, bringing up controversial topics in order to cause drama, just to look for a fight. In fact, in America, we have turned the sin of bragging and pride into a virtue of entertainment. But there are also more subtle, more acceptable ways of expressing our pride, like always bringing the conversation back to ourselves over and over again with what we've done, or even more subtly by constantly talking about our pain and sadness, about how badly things are going for us, finding ways to be the victim of some offense. Self-pity and boasting are both forms of pride. One is pride in the heart of the weak, and the other is pride in the heart of the strong. Love does not boast, it is not proud. That is, it does not speak much about itself, it does not brag about its achievements, it is not concerned about its sorrows. Love is not self-consumed, which means that a massive craving in our hearts must die, that nature that's inside us, if we're going to love. We're not prideful because we decide to be. We are prideful by our fallen, sinful nature. If love is humble and directed towards others, then love is death. This self-exalting, attention-seeking, whining, complaining, self-pitying me has to die. Take the key phrase in verse 5. It says, love is not self-seeking. Now, I don't think this means it's wrong to want to be happy, because in verse 3, Paul argues that if you don't love, it profits you nothing. So it's not wrong to want the right kind of profit. What he's saying is that love does not seek its own personal preference without regard to what may be good for others. Love seeks its joy and its profit in the good of others, not just self-gratification. It seeks the good of the many, not just the comfort of self. So if we are going to love, we are going to have to die to ourselves, because love is not self-seeking. We must move towards one another. And one of the greatest examples of this is John 3:16, where it says, "For God so loved the world that he what? That he just has feelings for us?" No, he didn't just stop there. He gave his one and only Son. He didn't just have emotions for us. He moved towards us in the most loving way possible. Now I want to talk to you about how we take this definition of love that we understand now, and we apply that to what I want to call a gospel community. Now, I could just say church, but that word brings to mind in most people a building or a place or a specific time and place that we come to. I want to challenge that idea and argue that church is much more than that. The church is a people, not a place. And not just any gathering of people at a specific time and place, but a community of people of God that know each other and do life together. People who love one another, people who care for one another, who share in joy and sorrow together. Not just a time and place that you go to, but a community of followers of Christ that you belong to. Now, before my wife and I got married, I just lived by myself or with other guys in college. And guys like to live a little differently than girls do. They organize their stuff differently. They clean up after themselves differently. They smell differently. So the first few months of marriage, I was lost. I was lost because the things that were important to her were not things that were important to me, and I was just living the way I knew how to live. And so after getting married and living together for a while, I've learned a few things. I've learned that she prefers things to be done a little differently, organized a little better, and to smell a little nicer. It wasn't overnight that I learned these things. There was a process of growth. It was this process where in doing life together, we kind of rubbed against each other and chiseled away at each other in such a way that we matured together. This is what the scriptures say occurs in the church. That in the same way that marriage is this process of deepening and growth and chiseling away one another in such a way that produces maturity, so it is as we walk in the community of the people of God. Walking with each other who have surrendered their lives to Christ, that we begin to grow and mature within the process of doing life together. Being married can be difficult at times, but you don't go from one marriage to the next and eventually fall into a perfect marriage where everyone agrees on everything and knows exactly what to do for each other without trying, without failing. No, it's a process. Just like the church, we don't just bounce around from one church to the next until we stumble into a place where magically they know who you are and you're able to grow into maturity with one another without you having to put forth any effort. No, it's a process. It requires effort. It's a two-way street. And so let's look at scripture that is very prescriptive of how a gospel community should function. If you've got your Bible still, turn to Romans 12, verses 9 through 13. It says, "Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need, and practice hospitality." So look at the first verse. It says, "Love must be sincere." There is another way that we can interpret this because it can also be translated, "Love must be without hypocrisy." The simplest definition of hypocrisy is pretending. Pretending to look a certain way, pretending to be another boyfriend that's not there, pretending that we're walking closely with Jesus, pretending that all is well when it's not, pretending that all is okay in our marriages when they're not, pretending that we're not struggling when in fact we are. The scriptures say that the church cannot afford to play this game. It cannot afford to be filled with men and women who understand what a perfect Christian life looks like and then begin to pretend to be that instead of who they really are. Love must be without hypocrisy. It is impossible to receive love if you are pretending to be someone you're not. Because any love that is shown to you, you'll know that they love this false, external version of you and not the real you. And so the scriptures say that in order to belong to a genuine community, in order to be part of the process that brings us to maturity in Jesus, love can have no hypocrisy in it. What ends up happening in the church where a majority of people are pretending is that in order to hide their weaknesses, they will point out the flaws of others. In order to hide their weaknesses and keep the mask of pretending, they will point out the more serious weaknesses of others. Do you know what the scriptures say more than Jesus was concerned with action? More than that, he was concerned with the heart. Every time he's questioned over and over again, Jesus says, you've heard it said, don't murder, but I'm telling you, hate in the heart is the issue. Jesus says it's about the heart. It's about what's on the inside. Don't let the church be filled with hypocrites and pretenders. Be honest where you struggle. The church has to be a place where it's okay to be broken and struggling. It has to be the place where we can come in and go, I have failed. Please pray for me. Please help me. If the church becomes anything other than that, then it's forced to be a place that's shallow, where things that are not important are elevated, and what's truly important is neglected or ignored altogether. As we continue in verse 9, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Okay, let me explain something. The most shallow, empty, and weak kind of love is where you see a brother or sister in Christ struggling with sin, walking in sin, and you say nothing to them. You don't confront them. You do not sit them down. You do not call them out. You either just hope it works out, or you do the whole prayer request gossiping thing where you get together with other people and you say, we need to pray for so-and-so because of this and that. Listen, I don't let my kids play in the road. I don't let my son play with fire. I don't let my daughter spend the night at friends' houses that I don't know and go, well, I hope in the end it all just works out. I hope they survive. But tell me this isn't the spiritual game that we're all playing. The scripture says, hate what is evil, that you should grieve over what is evil, that you should love enough, that love should be genuine enough, that we would take those we know and love who are openly walking in sin or getting dangerously close to it, to a cup of coffee or dinner table and say, I love you, I'm worried. So if you've ever heard the saying, hate the sin, love the sinner, that's where we got this from. Let's hate adultery. Let's hate addictions. Let's hate lies, but we don't hate people. Let's love people. But when sin needs to be called out, let's call it out. Verse 10 says, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourself. Some translations say, love one another with brotherly affection, that we would love each other like we're part of the same family. So we're commanded to feel for one another. And how hard is that? I mean, it's easy to do stuff for you, but it's not so easy to feel something for you. I think this verse is very much linked to the first one. Love must be without hypocrisy. If you think about the people that you have a deep respect for, deep affections for, deep care for, people we respect, love, and honor, have feelings for, are people who have been very transparent about who they are, very honest and open about who they are, about their struggles, about their strengths, about things that have occurred in their lives, about the events that have shaped them. And so I don't think you can have brotherly affection until you quit pretending. And once you get to that point of brotherly affection, and someone you feel those affections for is broken, it creates in us this desire to want to help them and to see restoration in them. Now, your heart breaks when you see them broken. And at this point, honor is easy. All right, let's read through to verse 12. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Now let's be honest about the word hope, because everybody wants to celebrate this word, but this is a word that's filled with pain and sorrow. Like if you have hope that things, that means that things right now are not as they should be. Right now things can be broken. So let's be joyful in hope while we're patient in the hard times by doing what? Being faithful in prayer. So what happens is this: as we go through the difficult seasons in life and we're hopeful that things will get better, we're walking through without hypocrisy, with brotherly affection for each other. What happens now is all of a sudden we have others around us who have been where we're at, and we've been where they're at. And we can encourage one another. We can help one another. We can build each other up. All of a sudden, the gospel community or the church begins to function like it should. The last verse today is verse 13. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. I think this is an easy one once the others are done. Once you have stopped pretending that you're more than you are, once you're honest about your struggles and your weaknesses, once brotherly affection begins to occur and we begin to love each other deeply, then when I see that you're in need or you see me in need, will you not naturally want to help? If I bring it back to the idea of family and I see my kids in need, I don't just hope it works out for them. I don't just sit back and watch. I move towards them and I help. Anyone who has put themselves out there and walked with a group of Christians knows this to be true. That's how God shows his love in the most tangible way. So get sick and watch what happens. Be honest about your marriage being in a tough spot, and watch men and women in the church rally around you. Fall into depression or lose your job, and watch men and women in the church join together to support you. My family has experienced this firsthand over the last couple of months. As most of you know, my wife Amanda was recently diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. And getting that phone call was a day that I won't ever forget. As our lives and future plans were being shattered to the point of dust, in a state of feeling abandoned, where our faith was tested and we questioned the very love of God himself, a community of saints rose up from every corner of our lives to make known the very real presence, the very real love of God. This community that's holding us up and pushing us forward, who's sharing our burdens, who loves us with an ahava type of love. And these people, the ones who God is working through towards us, these people are not tied to any specific building or time and place. His love crosses all boundaries and churches, different states and continents. You see, I don't look at my circumstances and measure God's love by how comfortable I am or how good things are. I was worth Jesus to God. He moves towards me. I know he loves me, and I see it every day through his people. You see, God is tangibly making himself known, touching you, hugging you, encouraging you, urging you on, propping you up with through other brothers and sisters in Christ who you're doing life deeply with. And that simply won't happen if you never plug in and are known among a community of people. You see, this is the experience of being the church. And we've boiled it down to doing church. So this is the command, to love one another. Jesus says this is the greatest commandment, to love God and to love others. And when you do that, the world will notice. And the prescription of what a gospel-centered community or the church should look like is that it should never be a place of pretending, where people are trying to be one thing when they're not. That it should be a place where we're honest about our weaknesses, where we're honest about the things that go on. This in turn creates the ability to engage one another to a serious level when sin is spotted in our lives. It creates affection for one another. It creates zeal in the life of the body. It all of a sudden creates the kind of people where we love one another enough to sacrifice our own money, our own time, our own energy to help those in need. It creates a place where knowledge and wisdom are passed down to younger generations. It creates this place where the dinner tables are filled with joy and laughter, or tears and sorrow. Stories of our great God and King. Let's go ahead and pray as I close out. Father, I thank you for these men and women, and I thank you for the opportunity to open up the Scriptures and see what you have to say. I pray that we would be patient in the process of trying to find this kind of community, that we would be faithful in working towards this, and that we would be challenged by the truth of the Scripture, that we'd be held accountable to observing them, God. We can't create these things. We need your help, God. Truly make us this church. And it's in your name we pray.